So this is how Russians think about Ukraine. I'm not making it up. It's not Western propaganda. This is what Russians are showing Russians in Russian state media. Special thanks to the Russian Media Monitor for putting this together. They do great work as always. Here we go. Let's see what they have to say. This is host Sergey Mardan. Here's what is happening during Putin's meeting. This came out just today. That the Russian government fully realizes the seriousness of the situation. They do realize the seriousness of the situation. They aren't adequately able to check the Ukrainian advance because they got a little bit full of themselves and thought, we don't really need to have real troops on the border. We can have just these conscripts here. They're holding their positions. Ukraine wouldn't be invading. So, okay, well, now they know. No one is trying to conceal the gravity of the current situation, except that they are. Because when there was a governor reporting to Putin how much land was lost, he countermanded him and told him, you'll wait for the military to tell you how much land you lost. Some things that were voiced in this meeting, some of which was broadcast for us, in my opinion, they were absolutely stunning. The fact that almost no one, it is not that they didn't pay attention, but I don't think it was reflected in the collective consciousness. Maybe the realization comes slowly, or people just don't have a perception of the numbers. The number that was stated, 180,000 people who have yet to be evacuated and 120,000 that have already been evacuated. I still can't get over this number. 180,000 domestic refugees. Yeah, it's not so cool when it happens in Russia as opposed to when you did that to millions within Ukraine. So, and that is in the Kursk region alone. What bigger shock does there have to be for those who are hiding in their emotional space, for those who don't want to know anything, for whom nothing has changed and nothing is happening? Somewhere, some kind of war is underway. To them, it's unnecessary, uninteresting, unimportant. Okay, so that is how many Russians have experienced the special military operation, which was a war which was wrecking the lives of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, and they didn't seem to care at all. What kind of an even more powerful emotional shock is needed in order for these people to feel real emotions? The tone deafness is just mind-numbing here. You can't separate yourself from those 180,000 people, 180,000 people who were forced to leave their homes in the Kursk region. Now, just for kicks and giggles, let's look at this. How many Ukrainian refugees? Nearly 6.5 million refugees from Ukraine have been recorded globally. That's 36 times what he's worried about. They are not some strangers. These are our people. Those don't realize what lies beyond Kursk. Take a look at the map. I will repeat once more. This is the heart of Russia. This is the historic, cultural, national core. That is Russia itself. That represents Russia. A place where Russian people live, where they were birthed and formed, from where it started to form and enlarge its nation state. He can say more with less actual meaning than like anyone I've ever seen. 180,000 Russian people just became refugees. I am emphasizing this so that some of the people who are listening to this program, just in the background while they are driving, someone is mumbling, "What is he talking about?" Come to your senses. This is our war. This is our common war. Whoa, did he just say it was a war? He can go to jail for that. He's got to be careful because this is only a special military operation and there's really nothing to see here. It's just, this little SMO. We have a common enemy. It's very easy and pleasant to unite against a common enemy. I realize this was not obvious for everyone during more than 2 years of the special military operation. Okay, he's back on script saying special military operation. Somewhere on the outskirts of our empire, our glorious legions are defeating the barbarians. Really? That's the way that he's framing this? Your glorious legions. Well, what's taken your glorious legions 2.5 years to not be able to conclude this war in Ukraine with these barbarian savages down in Ukraine who were supposed to be overcome in a few weeks? In some places they are succeeding, in others so-so. In some spots it's faster, in others it's slower. Well, it's mostly slower. It's actually almost all slower. The amount of real estate that Russia's been able to acquire in the since January to July has been roughly what Ukraine has taken in Kursk in about a week. This is a totally normal way of an empire's existence. Right, because he thinks of Russia as an empire that can dominate its neighbors, that can enslave their neighbors, that can draw them in and incorporate them into the empire. That's precisely the problem. You got to stop thinking like an empire and start realizing that you have to be a neighbor with other countries who have their own independent ways and independent life and don't want to be part of your empire. An empire is always waging wars somewhere. Wow, how telling. This is how I always thought and probably always will. Wow, he's telling us what the Russians really think. Like, for real, he's not even glossing over things at this point. But now these barbarians, having lost their minds, have invaded our historic lands. Right, so you can invade their historic lands, but they can't invade your historic lands back because you've invaded them? So war can only be one-sided? Is that what you're telling us? For this reason, they should be mercilessly destroyed with all ruthlessness. When people from the Kursk talk about what's happened to them, about those who came from that side, from the Sumy region, they lived next to them for decades, for centuries. The border has now materialized. Strangers, enemies are on the other side. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You created that condition 2.5 years ago when you rolled over the borders into Ukraine. And now these would-be friends who are across the border are now your enemies? What are you talking about? This is an important point. I understand that it will take time to erase the political rhetoric about us being one people. You're not one people. Ukraine is not Russia. You never will be one people. You've just created generational hatred between your countries by invading Ukraine 2.5 years ago. And that's on top of the smaller invasion 10 years ago. It's not one country. Civil war, blah, blah, blah. It's not a civil war. This is one nation state invading another. Yes, it's a civil war, one people, but let me tell you, the people on the other side who consider Russia to be their mother, we are one people with them. Well, there's few and far between of those that consider Russia to be anything positive at this point. It's dropped down from a large percentage of the population in the Donbass and the eastern side of Ukraine to single digits actually are favorable toward Russia now. Those who are wearing yellow and blue insignia, Ukrainian patriots, are not one people with us. They are our enemies. We have nothing in common with them. We don't have a single drop of pity for the Ukrainian soldiers being buried day and night in the Kursk region. Well, but there's really not a lot in the Kursk region being buried day and night. It's really a lot of Russian prisoners. Not at all. Do I feel any pity for them? Not at all. These are our enemies, soldiers of the enemy's army. They came to our land and they'll be buried in it. Well, you know, Ukraine's been doing a pretty good job of that exact thing in reverse. Like 590 some odd thousand casualties is not nothing. So be it. This is what had changed. This is what had happened. This is why yesterday's meeting, conducted by Putin, that was broadcast, his tone, his posture, his style, is important to us. And that's a little creepy, a little bit cult-like here, but okay. Those who question, why didn't Putin address the people? Let's not put on the military overcoat of World War II. It is not our size. It's way too big for us. Okay, but if he did address the people, he would be going on about what a wonderful address from Putin. He's done such a great job. He's cleared up all the misconceptions and destroyed all the propaganda of the enemy, or some such nonsense. We have our own war. He said war again. I'm telling people as a community can sense certain things without loud words, without publicizing it. Official video of yesterday's meeting was on such a high note that it equates to the brothers and sisters address. I don't know about you, this is how I heard it. And now we wait for official reports from the Defense Ministry. I have no doubt the enemy will be defeated and destroyed. I have lots of doubts about that. I think that they have a really good chance of holding significant territory and really being a menace to the Russians for a long time. This is their fate. They chose it. So be it. Alrighty then. Okay, so that's what we just saw here. And if you haven't subscribed to the Russian Media Monitor, by the way, they do great work and you can see these. Of course, it's all in Russian. They don't talk over the subtitles, but they provide it. So the Russians seem to think that 180,000 displaced Russians is terrible, but 6.5 million Ukrainians is okay. And they seem to think that the Russians are one people with the Ukrainians, except those that wear yellow and blue. They just need to be exterminated. Now, the key here is what you just saw was put on Russian state media for Russian consumption, And what we know is that the older you are in Russia, the more you're watching this kind of media and absorbing it. So, all right, there we are. What are your thoughts about this? Put it in the comments below. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.